Welcome to the Perspectives Podcast. Josue here. As most of you guys probably already know, I'm a fellow believer from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Almost messed up again. I attended the Oral Roberts University, and I currently live in Texas. And today we have with us Mr. Chase Brown. He was born in Texas. He attended University of North Texas. He's an aspiring philanthropic creative, and it is March of 2021, and it seems he still loves very long walks on the beach. Why that is, I have no idea, but we'll be able to get into that today. Chase, how you doing?
Doing good, bro.
Yeah.
It's been a fun few days. Went down to Austin to catch up with Grayson.
Yeah.
Down there.
Shout out to Grayson. He's a nice guy.
Shout out to Grayson. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
And then meet a couple people down there. Our boy Chaz came in town. So he let us know and he introduced us to a few cool people down there that hopefully we'll be able to partner with them and some of their organizations for some outreach and some service type stuff coming up soon. But yeah, and then life up here back at home is good. Kitchen table, it's finally a thing.
Yeah.
And set up. We don't have that improv table after 2 months finally.
It served us well.
And then it did, and the lawn chairs. Yeah.
The lawn chairs too.
And then finally got our TV stand set up, which shout out to, no free ads, but shout out to Meble, Meble Furniture.
Yeah, shout out to them.
They killed it. It's pretty modern. But yeah, so next time we have the podcast and video, y'all be able to see some of the improvements in furnishing we've made around the house. But how are you, bro?
I'm good, man. Speaking of Oral Roberts University, it turns out they made it to March Madness.
Hold on. The
Oral Roberts University. Turns out they made it to March Madness, so now I got to show them fake love. Although they should stop sending me emails asking for money. Yeah.
Do you not have real love?
Well, I mean, I haven't been supporting them. Like, it's not... actually, I have. I talk about them every day on the podcast. So
hopefully no fellow alumni is listening to this right now.
Well, if anything...
They'll be a little disappointed.
If anything, I've probably gotten them more students, so they got to start writing me a check. But we'll get into that later. So enough about us. As you guys probably already know, whenever we have these podcasts, we try to bring on special guests. And tonight we have a very special guest who's running on a lot of sleep, so she's going to have a lot of energy to be able to bring to you guys. She has a very complicated name, so I'm going to give her my best shot.
You got this. You
think so?
You got this. I'm hyping you up, bro.
I'm putting on my best German accent to be able to execute this name. So the first name, here I go. Can I get a drum roll, please? First name's Alicja. German? Yeah? No?
I mean,
Good.
yeah, it was
Terrible. Okay. Now here's the okay. Ooh,
That one's
Lord.
not German.
It's Nigerian? Well, it gotta be, because say, can you see? I give up. I can't do it.
It should be
How do you pronounce this?
Oshiokpekhai?
Nope.
He was close.
I was close.
Yes.
Oshiokpekhai?
No.
Oh, okay.
We'll
We're
practice
just going to
this.
say Alicja Oshiokpekhai.
Oshiokpekhai.
Okay.
Yes.
I appreciate you bailing us out.
But I hear some people call you Alicia. Can you explain that, please?
I mean, we're in America.
Yeah.
Who can say Alicia,
True.
you know?
True.
So, yeah. I don't even call myself Alicia anymore. I just kind of, I took on the the American name.
Yeah. I
got
feel like I've heard your
frustrated.
dad call you that.
What?
Or maybe your mom.
Both of them. Yeah,
Yeah,
both of them call
right,
me
right,
my
right.
name.
Right.
Alicia. It's just me. I'm like, my name's Alicia.
Understandable. Understandable. And today, it's going to be a very great episode. I feel like people always enjoy these.
Yeah.
It's probably our first time having one of these. So talking one
Am
of
I
these.
a creature?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We'll edit that part out. I didn't mean to make her sound like a creature. It's just very unique.
One of these
It's
animals.
a very unique blend, I should say. So for those of you who probably, since we're not doing video, you can't see what she looks like. She's half Nigerian and half German. So that's what I meant by one of these, which sounds terrible now that I mention it.
In retrospect,
Yeah, in retrospect. So, so before we start, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, I guess I kind of just gave that away, but tell us a little bit about yourself, where your people from, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
All that good stuff. Okay. My people are from Germany and Nigeria.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
I am Originally, where else? What else would I be? But I am from Germany, so I was born in Germany. My mom is from Germany. Her whole side is from Germany. My dad is from Nigeria. His whole side of the family is from Nigeria. So, you want me to branch out into other areas of life, like my age and what I do, or what? I don't know how to answer this question.
Tell us what you do. Yeah.
I'm a technical writer for a mortgage company, and in grad school to become a therapist.
There we go.
Yeah.
Full schedule right there.
Very full schedule.
Cool.
I couldn't imagine being in school.
It's so great. I'm having such a
Every time I text her, she's always doing homework. I'm like,
Homework.
crazy.
I'm reading.
Yeah.
Or crying.
I mean, then again, you already finished with your master's over here.
Yeah.
I just got my undergrad.
I finished my master's, so you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Humble brag.
Yeah.
Just Jordan
It's
shrug.
hope for all of us, right? Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But so then, how'd your parents meet? 'Cause that's interesting.
That's a great question. We've
how-
actually never asked anybody that.
Do you know
Yeah.
that? Because I mean,
Yes.
I guess thinking about it, I don't know how my parents. Oh, actually, no,
I don't know
because they
either.
said
I do know.
They said last night how my parents met was through softball. But I'm
Oh,
sure your
nice.
parents have an even more fun story.
They do. My mom is going to be like, "Ma'am, why are you telling this story?"
Oh.
But they met at a club
Oh.
in
Sam's Club?
no, at the club.
You never been to one of those before.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
I go
no.
to Sam's Club. That's
Yeah,
about it
yeah,
for me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They met at the club
Okay.
in Mönchengladbach, which is where I'm from. And my mom said that day, she was like, "I'm going to talk to the best looking man in here." And it was my dad. So that's how they met. And she said there was a language barrier. A lot of Germans speak English, like they're taught it in school. But my dad also has an accent. He has a Nigerian accent. So she was like, it's a bit of a language barrier, but they would like write each other letters. So
Yeah.
that's how they met.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I'm guessing your mom approached your dad then?
I actually don't know.
Or
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if there was eye contact and he came up, but I mean, I'm here. So somehow it worked.
Somebody worked out,
Somehow.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
started out with some eye flirting in the club,
Yeah.
and here we are.
I'm taking notes. On what to do.
Man, so then talk to us a little bit about what your childhood was like. Because, as you said, you lived over in Germany for a little bit.
Yeah.
And so what was that like culturally with having, a multi-ethnic household? And then as well, I mean, even from the perspective of living in Germany rather than over in America. So what was that like?
I think Germany was easy because that was what I was. I mean, I was born there. Like my mom is from Germany. My dad's Nigerian, but he had no family in Germany. So my only exposure to Nigerian culture was my dad and then his friends. He had a lot of Nigerian friends there. But I was German, I was just a German kid. So it kind of felt like what anyone, I guess, would feel like, just when you're born somewhere and you're raised, it's just like, oh, this is home, this is normal.
Yeah.
I don't think I even realized I don't know. I wasn't looking at my parents like, wow, one is white and one is black. It was just like mama and papa. But my mom told me there was one day I came home from kindergarten, and y'all can't see me, but I'm very, very fair skinned. And I came home from kindergarten crying, and I was like, they said I was black, but I took a shower today. And my mom was like, that's not what they mean. Like, papa's black, so you're black. And I was like, okay. But I didn't have any like concept outside of, that. I was just like, oh, it's just, normal. I didn't think of German being my culture because I was just there, I just, so, yeah.
Yeah, I remember leaving the Congo like at a very young age as well. And you say you left when you were 7?
I was
believe?
6, about to turn 7, yeah.
Right. So you probably didn't really have a lot of experience there, in your...
No, I did. I can remember. Okay. Yeah, see? Don't try to project your
Let me not project
life
my
onto
life
mine. Excuse
experiences.
me.
Yeah,
upon
just because
her.
you don't remember
Just 'cause
the
you don't
Congo.
remember?
Just
very
because
much.
I don't remember the Congo.
Yeah.
No, I
but
remember very vividly.
We'll talk about that some other
Yeah.
time.
I guess I should probably switch up my question. But, but no, along those lines, it's like, when was that awareness of, it's almost like in America, I don't know if it's an American thing, but that awareness of like, I am, black, or I am, you kind of having to deal with both things. Or was that something you experienced when you came to America?
Maybe when I was older, I think I struggled more or noticed more of the fact that I was foreign. Like that was more of the difference than white and black. Because I was never like, I'm so confused. Well, it wasn't, I think maybe that aspect I started paying attention to when I was like in junior high. But for the most part, when we first came over here, it was like we came and it's like completely new culture, completely different people. And I guess maybe looking back at it, I wasn't really looking at race, but it's like I was very used to white people because Germany is full of white people, but Americans are very different, you know? So it wasn't like, oh, these people get me, because it was super different. And then I was also Nigerian. And so it was like that. It wasn't like I was just one thing or another. So that was difficult. I was just weird. Like people were just like, ew. You know, elementary school kids are harsh. So I think that was my experience. And so it was like a culture shock to the American culture, but it was an even bigger culture shock to the Nigerian culture, because I had never really like been ingrained. And then it was like, I have all this Nigerian family here. And my brain was like, what? What is happening?
Yeah.
So that's what I remember as far as like younger age. And then as I was older, I think I was more aware of maybe race.
Yeah, because there's something called, I want to say it's called the fishbowl effect, in either sociology or psychology, one of the two. Not pulling out a verse from Zephaniah here, not doing that this time around. But essentially what it is like, in short, is you never realize the uniquenesses of your own fishbowl until you go outside of your own fishbowl.
Yeah.
And because you just kind of see it as normal, you don't see it out of the ordinary, you don't see it as unique, and like something that's kind of inherent and unique is either like standing out or kind of rare.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I know, like for me as well, like I never really realized kind of like the uniquenesses of like Texan culture, for instance, until like I left Texas for the first time.
Yeah.
Which my family traveled around a lot, so it was, you know, at a you know, in elementary school. But in terms of like realizing a good amount of that, yeah, it wasn't really until high school, and then especially whenever I went over to Paris for the first time with my dad in high school, and just like, wait, so where are all the trucks and where's all the land, and why are these small cars here, and why is water carbonated? This doesn't make sense to me.
Water is carbonated.
What is this? Why do I have to ask for ice? No, give it to me.
Why are we walking everywhere?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think it's kind of interesting from there that, you know, God would bring you over here at like a somewhat, I guess, impressionable age, like late elementary school, early middle school. And so from there, were you, and if the answer is no to this, perfectly fine. Were you able, since you kind of stumbled across the uniquenesses of your culture at a young age, like potentially like relative to other people, do you think that's something that God had you kind of honor and embrace those cultures at a younger age? Or was that something that more came along with kind of like time?
It came with time.
Yeah.
Oh, it came with time. I hated it. I hated it. I just was different, you know, like I was different. I had an accent. I was this tall. Guys, I'm 5'9". I was this tall in elementary school. It was just like awful, but I didn't like it because I just I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. Okay. And I was like trying to learn to adapt, like what's normal, you know? And my parents are very different. So it was like the household was different. And yeah, no, it wasn't until I got maybe older, maybe in high school, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Especially the Nigerian part, because when we were younger, being African was not cool.
Yeah. We talked about that a little bit with Peniel.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. But yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
You do know Peniel.
Yeah, we went to, did we go to elementary school together? We went to high school together.
High school.
Okay.
We were neighbors.
Yeah. It's a small world, as the people say. But I mean, even to that point, though, how do you, like you said, tell us a little bit about, you know, the Nigerian culture and the, you know, German culture being so different, because like whenever we have these podcasts, usually it's somebody from, you know, Greece or
one place,
right? So their home experience is just from that place, but for you, it's like two different things, especially being in America now, where you have your Nigerian family kind of influencing, you know, how you grew up. So tell us a little bit about that.
The differences, I don't even know. I think just in the way that maybe they express themselves sometimes can be seen in like an opposite way. Like, whereas I think sometimes the German culture is more like, we're going to take care of the immediate family first and then move outwards. And not that like my family is necessarily like that, but that's more German culture. And Nigerian culture is like, there is no immediate family. Everybody's family. So there would just be some differences sometimes where there would be like a disconnect. I think we call it hot climate cultures and cold climate cultures. And Germany is more of a cold climate culture. Not literally like cold, but the way that people operate. It's kind of like Germany, America. I think they're cold climate and they're more about autonomy, about self. And then there's warm climate, which is like, I think South America, like Africa, like we are more like communal. And not to say that those aren't like aspects of each other's cultures, but it would just be like sometimes opposite sides
Right.
of the fence where it's like, what? Like, I couldn't, it was, and I definitely think the Nigerian culture has had more of an impact on me just because I grew up majority here, but it would just be different things like that, like miscommunication or just the way they viewed things would be different. Not wrong. It just was like a different angle of which they viewed it at.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I think I'd be interested to learn this. How did your parents kind of reconcile that in terms of kind of deciding how to raise you and what values to kind of adopt from the different cultures? And like, maybe you could express that in like a story rather than like hey, this part of the culture, like they really enforce, because I doubt you remember that since you were a kid. But any sort of stories in terms of like potentially your parents getting into, I don't want to say a disagreement, because I don't really know if we want to bring that up on the podcast, but just to honor them. But yeah, just where potentially, a way that your mom wanted to raise you was a little bit different than kind of traditional Nigerian culture. And from there, I'm sure your parents kind of had to work through that in a way.
I think they merged it pretty well.
Yeah.
I can think, my parents are divorced now, so things definitely changed after their divorce.
Okay.
But I can think of when I was little, I think in Germany, kids have a little more freedom. Like you walk to school by yourself, like you just you can leave the house. I think first grade, I would be walking to school by myself. Whereas Nigeria, I think they're a little bit more like, where are the kids going? Let's make sure. And so I remember being here in elementary school and my friends would want me to spend the night and my mom would be like, great. And my dad would be like, no.
Yeah.
And so then there was this agreement that my dad would be like, if they ask a week ahead, you can go. And what 8-year-old calls a week ahead, but they eventually would like come to terms like with it. Like, okay, we know this friend, she can go. And I remember, oh, hi, Taylor, if you're listening. I would go to Taylor's house and I would call my dad every time I spent the night, like 2 a.m, and be like, can you come get me? And so it was, that he tried and was like, see, this is why you can't spend the night anywhere. That wasn't why, but she told me she had ghosts in her house and she had cats. So I'd be like, please come get me.
Okay, I was about to ask.
I'd be out of there. I'd be out of there.
Oh, so you got to explain why
I
you had
want
to leave.
Yeah. But just things like that, or even like education, like, lawyer, doctor, engineer. And then my mom was like, well, whatever makes you happy. So kind of coming into that. And I think my dad also, he lived in Germany for longer than I did. So like he already took in some of that culture, was familiar with that culture. And then when we came over here, my mom was, she was pretty good at taking in the Nigerian culture. So I don't ever remember them, because I was so young when they were together, I can't really remember them like disagreeing on something or being like, like it just, I don't think I noticed.
Like they were good at compromise in a way. Yeah, just coming together on things and agreeing on those like shared set of values on how to raise you and things like that.
I don't think I noticed the difference until they got divorced and I would go to one household and I would come to the other. And I was like, wait, like what? But they still did pretty good then because they, I think, respected what each other wanted for their kids. But, yeah.
And then you guys like move over here and there's another thing thrown at you guys, this whole American culture right? So, like you mentioned earlier, you were in elementary school, and being African wasn't always the coolest thing.
It wasn't.
And you were super tall for no reason. And
so-
you met Taylor at some point. Shout out to Taylor.
Taylor, yes. I was going to say her full name. Never mind.
Yeah.
But yes, Taylor.
Yeah, and you met Taylor. So tell us a little bit about trying to. Is the word in when you try to ingratiate?
What?
Ingratiate.
It starts with an A. Assimilate.
assimilate.
I should know this.
Describe. Give me a definition.
Yeah, it's kind of like assimilating.
But the other word.
Yeah, it starts with an I.
What?
Like ingraining.
Or you're making up words now.
No, bro, ingrain is a word. Maybe ingraining isn't a word. But
ingraining? What?
So
somebody look it up
Can
for
you give
us.
me a secondary definition, please?
Yeah, it's like assimilating, pretty much. Like
Assimilating?
Assimilate.
So we're in a simulation right now? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, like in.
Because I don't want to get into that with you. I'm sorry, bro.
Jeez.
You're a pastor too.
I know, is what I'm saying. Like I should know these words.
Incorporate.
Not incorporate.
Engross.
What?
Absorb.
Okay, I'll find it at some point, but let's use assimilate since that's a word that everybody apparently knows. So tell us a little bit about kind of adding on that American culture or just being influenced by it, because obviously your parents can't keep you at home. You got to go to school and all that. So tell us a little bit about learning about the American culture and trying to
integrate it.
No, familiarize
That's
yourself.
right, yeah.
No,
That
I'm
is
gonna
the
find
word.
it. I'm gonna find it.
Hey, you need to be humble here because English is your second
It
language.
is my second language.
I'm trying to help you out.
Listen, that's not the word I'm going for. I'm gonna find it.
Okay.
Or else this podcast is gonna be end right now.
Hey, let's just go with integrate. Okay.
Let's go with the simulate.
Can we?
now.
Merge. Unite.
Let's merge
Okay. All right.
into simulate. We'll go with that.
All right.
What was the question?
I don't know. I don't
You need to
know.
rephrase
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So while the people are searching what the word is, so you're coming with German background, Nigerian background. Now you're in America, and now there's America. Like, tell us a little bit about that.
I don't.
American culture
Oh
hitting
my gosh. I just remember because I was so little. I just remember everyone was so mean. They were so mean. And I remember being like, I don't think I had, because I was so young, I don't think I had as much awareness as if I would have been older and been like, oh, I'm trying to understand what the culture is about. But it just was like, I remember being in class and like talking and being like, yeah, I like to eat chicken. And they'd be like, it's chicken, not chicken. So I was like, oh my gosh. And like even the games I like to play, people didn't like to play. And I remember being on the playground, like asking kids, like, can I play with you guys? And they'd be like, we don't play, we cheerlead. And I was like, what is this?
What does that mean?
I don't know. It was a very
We don't
strange.
play with cheerlead. Yo, that's a tweet though. I'm gonna start saying that.
We don't play. We cheerlead. So
I like
don't.
that.
I mean, it was just very different.
What?
And that was me.
What?
I was like 7. What is cheerleading? What's cheerleading? Yeah, no, I didn't. I don't know. I can't really remember. I think I don't know if I think like maybe German and Nigerian, like the mix between that is very similar.
But is there like a point where you start realizing, or your parents or people are like, man, you're becoming American?
No.
Does that make sense? Or is that never like really affected
No,
you?
I think Germans are maybe a little more liberal in some senses than Americans, the Texans. And then I guess that is just kind of balanced out. I don't know. I don't think my parents were ever like, oh, wow, you're an American. Like, I don't know. I think
not
they
even like
wanted,
your family back home.
I couldn't really. So when I moved here, they told my mom, and this is not how it's supposed to go, but ESL, I was taking ESL courses.
Shout out to ESL. I was in that mug too.
I was taking ESL and they put me in gifted and talented English at the same time. Does that make
Why?
sense? No, but
Wait.
Yeah, no.
Wait, stop. I gotta explain what that means. So ESL's English for second language for people learning how to speak English. Gifted and talented is a very high level class for people that know English. So how in the world were you doing both things? Those are opposites.
I remember we came to the States. I went to an English speaking school. So I had to learn. I went to a school where they taught me like English. And then I went to like elementary school and they would pull me out and take me to ESL. Well, one day the counselor took me and I did like the IQ test, and she was like, perfect, like you're good for gifted and talented English. And so some days they would pull me and I would be in ESL, and other days they would pull me and I would be in gifted and talented English. So if you ask me to explain like what a verb or an adjective or a noun is, I literally cannot. I can just speak it, because I remember it was like around second grade when you're learning that. So I would get pulled from class and learn how to spell together to get her. Like literally that's what they would teach me. And then I would go to Gifted and Talented, where they would teach you similes and metaphors and symbolism. So I don't know why they would do something like that. But
That's
to
different.
answer your question,
Yeah, please.
they told my mom she shouldn't speak German with me at home because I would lose the English language, which I went to undergrad to be a teacher, and you're supposed to speak both.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but I picked up English maybe like 3 months, and my German was, so I didn't really speak to my family like that. And I was little, so it's like I didn't really have, I mean, I had a personality, but not that much that if I would have came back like a year later, they would have been like, whoa, I was small, so.
Yeah. So then something that from what I've observed from like friends who are German, and it'll be a little bit of a generalization, but I just want to see if it's something that maybe you observed and thinking of it on retrospect, is like, I feel like German culture is very much, it is a lot, how can I say it? It's like more orderly than American culture in terms of like rule following, and like that being like a sort of big thing.
Yeah.
And then in American culture, it's like, I think down here, especially in like the southern part of like the States, like it's some like with southern culture and stuff like that, kind of like saying yes ma'am, like no sir and stuff like that is a thing. But still, even from there, like talking back in school or different things like that is still like somewhat present with the culture here, and trying to get a little bit less like distance between adults and kids. I'm starting to ramble right now. Oh my gosh. But yeah, basically, could that be a thing in terms of Americans kind of just like go off on their own way a little bit, and Germans are a little bit more orderly?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I think Germans are more independent.
Okay.
I think they're taught how to be more independent and self-sufficient at a very young age. Like you see young kids like riding public transportation and like I said, walking to school, going to the store, things like that. But I do think that Germans are very like punctual people. Something starts at 3, they're gonna be there at 2:45. Like they follow rules. Yeah, like you don't cross the street if the light isn't, green for you to. Yeah, you don't. So I guess I could see on both sides how that would be, I guess, true and not true. But yeah, Germans they're pretty orderly.
Yeah, because everything has nuance in it. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, before I ask my next question, I just want to pause here and let the people know that I was correct. And here is the word I was trying to pronounce.
Ingratiate?
Yeah. You see the definition?
I mean, bring oneself into favor with someone by flattering or trying to please them.
Okay.
Go down. Read the other one.
Well, I need to press the button here.
Yeah, that small one.
17th century Latin ingratium.
No. Just, gosh.
Basically, it seems like it's
read a social thing.
Social thing.
A social climber, whatever it says.
A social climber who had tried to ingratiate herself with city gentry.
Oh, that would have made a lot of sense.
So I'll say this in pushing back a little bit. It's very similar to integrate. But basically, ingratiate is more about favor, where integrate is more of like a functional point of view.
Okay,
kind of thing. So it's a balance of both of those.
I think that is a good question, because I can think of goodness, how I tried to ingratiate.
Yeah.
There you go. There we go.
I guess the way that I talked, I tried to get rid of my accent very quickly. I would stop liking what I liked and look at what the other kids liked. Talking the way that they talked, as far as like, I told you they were mean. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I need to pick up some of that. And then I started relaxing my hair. So I would chemically straighten my hair. And I also think that has a lot to do with just society at that point, right? The standard of beauty was definitely more lean to white. So, and I went to school with predominantly like white people. And so I just remember I hated my natural hair. I hated my natural hair. And I literally got it chemically straightened from age 7 all the way to age 22. So even after I had gotten past some of that, like it was still there. But I remember I would just try to like merge with whatever group I was with. So, and I remember really doing that. And I think once I started to hang out with people that were other minorities or foreigners, I was like, oh, okay, I don't have to do that here because we're pretty similar. But I remember I always felt like I didn't fit in or weird. And so I would try to like sometimes overcompensate because they'd be like, girl, what are you talking about? I was like, I don't know. I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But that's real because I remember being young. I've shared this story so many times, being young and walking up to a group of kids when we came to America. It was my brother and I. They were laughing at something. I don't know what they were laughing at. But as kids, you take it so personally. You just feel like they're laughing at you.
Yeah.
You know, and I can remember trying to learn English for the sake of trying to communicate with other kids. But I don't know why whenever you said from 7 until 22, I was like, oh, she stopped last year. Obviously, you're not 23.
No, it's cool. I'm 23.
Okay, she's 23. So then my question, I think I personally, I mean, maybe you can attest to it, I personally have never had German food before. But I've had Nigerian food. So I think that's a interesting question to bring up. So tell us a little bit about the food. Because we were talking about, Ethiopian food earlier.
I'm so excited.
No, that's all I'm going to say. Yeah.
I'll just tell you, you will never have German food here. All these German restaurants are not German. They're just not. They're not. They don't have the same ingredients. There was like one little German store in Grapevine and they shut it down. And that's...
Why?
I don't know. I'm sure not enough people were
it's
going.
Too close. Yeah.
But German food... Maybe because it's like the first
Is
food I've
good?
ever had. It's delicious.
What do y'all eat a bunch of?
Like it...
Okay.
From what I've had, yes. Like, I think it depends on your taste profile and what you like.
I'm scared.
It's delicious.
It is like
soups and stuff.
Can you relax?
Like,
okay, my bad.
Like kind of basic sermon stuff, or German. I said sermon stuff. What a goodness, am I a pastor? But like German food, like schnitzel and
I guess it depends on where in Germany you are too.
Like sausage, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't eat a lot of schnitzel growing up.
Sounds like there might be a bad memory there.
No, I just did. I think that's more South German. I might be wrong, but I ate a lot of bread.
Yeah,
that's all I remember. German's bread is just it's phenomenal. I would eat a lot of Butterbrot, which is literally bread and butter. Butterbrot, butter and bread. But we have a lot of like, yeah, a lot of bread, a lot of like meats and cheeses, and our meat is like you know how bologna over here is gross? Our bologna is not gross. It is like quality, and we eat a lot of. We would eat a lot of sweet stuff. Like we would eat Pfannkuchen, which is like a German pancake, but you can eat it for like lunch and dinner, and it's huge. It looks like a crepe, and it has apples in it.
Okay.
Or waffles, which they're like soft. You put powdered sugar. But you eat a lot of things like goulash or like, yes, some soup. And yes, it's seasoned. I just want to say that because I feel like you were trying to go somewhere.
No, I was just curious. Curious.
But yeah, no, a lot. I mean, there's a lot. Like there's a lot to eat. Everything. Noodles. We eat a lot of noodles. We eat a lot of potatoes. We eat a lot of potatoes.
Yeah. Because like for me, with like my German experience, like what we talked about beforehand, I mean, I've been to Munich, Stuttgart, and Fussen, and so all of those are like places in South Germany.
Yeah.
And so very similar to like the United States, how all over the place you have different kind of foods and stuff like that. Like, I mean, Josue doesn't like New York pizza for some reason.
It didn't get me excited.
I don't think I ever had New York pizza.
Oh, it's so good. Y'all just I'll text y'all some places after this.
Yes.
We can keep the conversation going. But basically how it's kind of different all over the place.
Yeah.
And so for me, like schnitzel and like sausage and different things like that.
Schnitzel is pretty good.
It's like what we had.
So a bunch of soup, pretty much.
Okay.
Schnitzel is not soup.
Schnitzel is sausage.
In soup?
No.
Stop with the soup, bro.
Red cabbage. We also have a lot of Turkish people in Germany. So they have a lot of like kebab. Oh my gosh. So good. Like, so that was, I mean, obviously that's not German food, but it's kind of like, I guess, Mexican food in Texas. It's not Texan, but it's there, you know, so.
Yeah, because I was actually going to bring up the cabbage because, like, me, I don't like cabbage. And so, like, with that being like I don't want to say like a super big thing, but with like a common.
For some
part
people,
of
they
food.
might be like, no, red cabbage is my jam.
Yeah. So.
If it's done right.
You like coleslaw?
No. Yeah. But that's not because I'm German, it's because I'm Nigerian.
Just like Pilar.
Yeah, that's so bad.
Yes. We'll tell you about that.
Yeah, that's
too
stuff.
good.
Yeah.
It is too good. So then, kind of from there, when would you say? Because you talked a little bit about in childhood trying to conform or ingratiate yourself to the like majority culture here in like the States. And so at what point did you start to embrace and like honor your unique heritages? And then from there, was Nigerian or German the one that you really started to kind of be proud of or embrace and kind of highlight that?
I think probably like in junior high is when I noticed. And then high school, I was like, yeah, you know, but I remember my dad pulling me to the side and having a conversation with me about race. And he was like, you're not white. And I was like, what? And he was like, people do not see you as white and you need to make some black friends. And I was like, what is happening? But I mean, he was right, you know, and I think through that, I was like, oh, you know, like I got introduced to Black culture, like Black American culture. And then I guess through that, it was like, oh, I love being Nigerian. So it just kind of grew as I got older. And then I had like other foreign friends or other friends that were of minority. Because although my mom is white, German is still a minority, you know, like, so as I saw them embrace it, I was like, awesome. So I think maybe like probably college is when I was fully like, yes, this is what I am. But I do think that the Nigerian culture has had a bigger impact just because it's only my mom that's over here. So even as I was growing up, like even if I wasn't like super like, oh, this uniqueness is great, it was still, you know, it was still molding and shaping me. So yeah.
Yes, that's pretty interesting. To the point where you said, like you said, like I am Black, right? Is there ever that side of where it's like, well, I am something else as well, but one of them is just emphasized so much more than the other.
The Holy Spirit really had to work with me because it got to a point where like I really wasn't feeling, to be honest, I just did not feel comfortable around white people. And I think it was my experience when I was younger coming here. I just never felt like I really fit in and I was weird. And obviously that's not all of them, but that was just my experience. And then I went to a high school or junior high where it was even more emphasized. And so then I was like, oh, I feel like I can just be me around these people, right? And then society tells you, I mean, at the end of the day, I know that like people look at me as a Black woman, you know what I mean? And I am, but it wasn't until I think maybe last year, the Holy Spirit was like, I also made you white, you know? And it was like, I have to be realistic about the experiences that I will face. And just and my dad would say it like this. He's like, you can join the Black Panthers, but you can't join the KKK. That is such a drastic example. But I mean, it's, you know, it's true. But I also had to realize that just because society is deceived and will tell me like, that's not what you are. God is like, I made you both, you know, like, and both of those cultures are, and both of those races are impactful and like special and unique. So yeah, for a while, I would just be like, I'm Black. And mixed. I think I would say Black first, and then I would be like, yeah, I'm German Nigerian. And then people would meet my mom, and they'd be like, your mom's white? And I'm like, oh yeah. Surprise. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think the way that society over here, like, molds it, I think my dad was really trying to prepare me, like, no, sis, listen, you know? And so I think I kind of, not that it's a bad preparation, but I think the deception of society, I just took it on. And it's like, at the end of the day, I'm both. I understand like the implications, but at the end of the day, like God made me both. And I love being German and I love being Nigerian. So, yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like for you
Which part?
in terms of embracing, like finding that balance of embracing like Congo culture and American culture and like the
Listen,
positive parts of those?
I
Because you've
don't
talked
think
about
I've
it a little
ever
bit, but get into it.
I don't think I've ever, not ever, but I don't think, I just said that 3 times. Embracing the American culture, I think it slowly kind of creeped up on me. But I mean, right now I'm an American citizen, but I never say I'm American. You know, like I'm always like I'm Congolese because I remember. I think part of the reason is when I was younger, there would be other Congolese people who were ashamed of where they were from. You know, so
Yeah.
they would constantly say they're from Europe or
I'm from
whatever. I'm
France.
from France.
Uh-huh.
When you're not, you weren't born there. You probably your plane took you there and then brought you over here. It doesn't mean you're from there.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, just wanting to embrace and not being ashamed of where I was, because like you mentioned, when we were younger, there was a lot of shame associated with being African for whatever reason. I don't know why. So in a sense, I always wanted to keep that. You know, wanted to keep that I'm Congolese
That's awesome.
and all that stuff. So I think American culture probably influenced me in maybe some of the decisions or the way that I see life presently. But in terms of like identity, of like you'll say you're American or Texan or whatever, right? You know, I'm always going to say I'm Congolese, even though I'm a citizen or whatever, right? That's kind of how I always approach that. But there is, you know, like whenever we had the culture dinner,
Yeah.
you know. So my family came, my mom, my sisters, and their husbands, and there was probably like 30 of my friends, and just talking about, you know, some of the stuff from Congo and culture and life there. I remember seeing some people's faces, especially when we were talking about marriages and, you know, that whole, how marriage is so different in terms of like the dynamics between the husband and the wife. And I remember looking at some of the girls, they were just shocked because,
Excuse me?
yeah, exactly, right?
Never. Yeah.
And so I stepped away from that, kind of seeing like, man, my mindset has definitely changed over the years in terms of how I've seen things, you know, because in our culture, the man is very dominant,
Yeah.
you know, but then you come to America, it's like this partnering thing. So I've adopted a lot of those type of mentality over the years without even knowing it. You know, it's kind of impacted me in that kind of way.
So then a thought. And this is for both of y'all, do y'all think, like, assuming that you and your descendants, like your kids of your kids, assuming they stay here, which very well could not be the case, because like you and I have talked about like potentially raising my kids in Costa Rica and other places. But assuming that, do you think the further that your family tree goes down the line from whenever you immigrated over to America and came over here, do you think that the Congolese and Nigerian and German cultures are going to continue to be preserved? Or do you think it's something that the potential or probability of embracing that American identity will take even more of a foothold? Because I'm bringing it up because like I know my family's been in like the Midwest United States for around at least 7 generations, if not longer. And so like I'm kind of thinking that of just like I don't even know like off the top of my head like where we came from over in Europe. And so from there, like I'm wondering if that is something that y'all think could potentially happen. And so then from there, if the answer is yes, if that gives y'all more motivation to like preserve your culture and pass that down to like your kids and grandkids.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think that for sure, especially like Nigerian culture or African cultures, everybody knows where their dad is from. Like I feel like we trace back, oh, I'm from this village, and it's like where your grandpa's, you know. So like I think growing up in a household with foreign parents, like that does have a big influence. But I do think American culture is impactful. And then if this is their home, I think it will impact them differently than it did me or their first home. But I think it also depends on things like who are their friends? Like what's their social circle? Who do they get married to? Because if they marry another German or another Nigerian, then I would see it continue to be passed down. But I think it makes me think of more so preserving that German culture, because I feel like there's so much of it that I don't really know how to pass down. So yeah, and I don't think it's a bad thing, like if they become more American because they're American, but I would like them to. I feel like my great grandkids are gonna be like, I'm 1/4, like that's gonna be them. But
Doing the math.
I think where we're at too, it's easier to track your family down because we're gonna be grandparents one day, and it's gonna be like, look at my grandma's Instagram, like they're just gonna be able to know,
IG.
yeah, to track that stuff.
Yeah. No, that's like you mentioned, it really depends, like, especially who they marry. That's a big one.
Yeah.
It's like every foreigner's parents' dream is for their child to marry within the culture.
They can't
So you don't
tell
have to
me
lose
nothing.
that. Huh?
They can't say anything to
Yeah.
me. What are y'all gonna say?
Yeah, you're a little
Ooh.
Oh no.
I'm so sorry.
How could you do this to
I
us?
really put it on vibrate.
Remember we were talking about that earlier?
I put it on vibrate, Nathan.
And you even gave me a hard time about it?
I did.
Wow.
That was my 8:30 a.m. when I put on vibrate. I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, I thought that was your bedtime alarm for a second.
Yeah, my train of thought is just out the window. No, I know where I was. So it really depends on, like, who you marry. Because there's only so much I feel like as a parent you can do in terms of trying to preserve that kind of stuff, so they know. Like I don't want to put out their business, so I'll just leave it at that. Another thing that I wanted to talk to her about, because I know you mentioned earlier that you're a big time is it therapist, counselor?
Definitely not a therapist.
Okay, you're on your way.
On my way.
I feel like over the last, I can't really trace it, but over the last couple of years, I keep hearing this word, mental health. It's really become a really big thing. I think even where I come from, a lot of times in my culture, that's not something that's talked about a lot. So, we also want to use this time to kind of let you to get into that conversation a little bit about mental health and the importance of that. I feel like you'd be a good person to talk to about that, since that's kind of where the Lord's called you to. So, yeah. Do I need to pose it in the question format? Or is that a question?
Shaking her head right now.
Shaking her head. Okay, let's see. How do I want to frame this? So let's just to start. Tell us a little about mental health and why that's so important.
A little bit.
Just like, how about this? To narrow it a little bit.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on mental health and its importance from a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I was getting to it. I was getting at that eventually.
Mental health, I don't know what else to say, but it's real. It's real, like physical health, like there are so many things as far as like anxiety or depression or just being sad, whatever, like the way you process things, those are very real. And so I think that just like we would take care of our physical health, it's also important to take care of like emotional health and mental health. But from a Christian perspective, I think what's really cool is that as I continue to study, I can just see how the Bible applies to certain things. So as I'm studying how certain people might have, certain trauma that they face when they're younger, certain sins that, they have engaged in or have been brought upon them, how that can distort the way that they think and the way that they see things. And it can bring forth anxiety, and it can bring forth deception, and it can bring forth triggers where you're like in a mental block that keeps you from navigating or processing things the way that the Lord intended you to. I think that's very real. And those are like spiritual strongholds sometimes, like that is the way that the enemy bounds us. And so it's like, the Bible says, don't worry about tomorrow. Do not be anxious. Like, cast your cares onto me, take my burdens on. And it's like, oh yeah. But it's like, I see what happens when you don't do that. Like I see what kind of deception and what kind of playing field the enemy has when you don't do that, and how deep it gets, and how it's not always like, oh, okay, I've realized that like there's a stronghold here, I'm surrendering it to God and I'm healed. Sometimes it happens like that, but sometimes it's like years of work because you've been navigating and looking out of this deceptive lens for years, just because, you were so triggered or filled with anxiety or exposed to a toxic or sinful mindset. And it's just cool. Like, it's cool that's not cool, but it's cool to see how like real God's word is, and how like these warnings are, they're on purpose, and how when he says to pray to him, like, think of how wonderful he is, and like come to him asking for him to take the anxiety away, and to think of things that are honorable and praiseworthy. Those things really do make a difference, and they can shape how you think and how you see things, and it can help you to like navigate through the world clearly. But it's like so many people struggle in so many different ways, even if it's small. Like if you've been through minimal trauma, like there are just things that would be good to talk to a therapist about, because it's like, have you ever thought of why you feel that way before a test? And it's like, oh no, that's not normal. Like some things you don't recognize as like abnormal, or maybe not abnormal, but like, oh, I could do it in a healthier way, until you talk to somebody about it. But I just think that like sin and living in a fallen world, it has such deep impacts. And a lot of that is mentally. I feel like for me personally, the way that I'm attacked the most is like mentally, through thoughts, through like triggers, through anxiety. And so obviously like therapy is not, it's like a tool to help heal. Obviously Jesus is the one, that heals us. But at the end of the day, like truthfully, even for those who don't believe, like therapy is a helpful tool, like it's just that extra step of the freedom that Jesus brings us. But yeah, I just think, even like when I think of Paul, where he's like, I don't look back, I continue to move forward, like things like that. I don't think sometimes when we read those things, we realize the weight of, well, if I continue to look back, like what happens,
right.
And I think the Lord revealed to me the other day, there are some things that I have in my own past, like trauma, that he was revealing to me so that I could surrender it to him and heal. But I was just holding on to it and just like remembering and remembering and remembering. And it had shaped so much of like my life and the way I think and the way I navigate. And God was like, do you remember like all the times in the Bible I tell you to remember me? So like how much we remember our trauma or hold on to it and continue to be triggered, that has huge impacts in our lives. But it's like, if we supplement that as much as we can with remembering when God has showed up, what he says, like that impact is much greater, so.
So then how do you, I mean, that was a great answer. You could tell she was really passionate about that. Thumbs up. So how do you kind of, because obviously there is, as believers, you see a Christian, Christian counselor and versus just, I guess a secular counselor. I don't know. I'm not in that field. So wanting to apply the word of God, right? That kind of brings you to a place of, faith. Faith is something that we have to apply as believers, right? In everything pretty much. But then the reality of your mind constantly, being anxious. The word is telling you fear. I was about to say, have no fear. That's like Buzz Lightyear or something. I don't know. What does the Bible say? Fear not, fear not, fear not. But yeah, you're dealing with these various things. So how, maybe as a counselor, how do you kind of walk somebody through that too? To where, especially if they're a believer, you can blend both of those things to where they can take their mind off of this and apply some faith to that.
I think first, shout out to my therapist, because I'm just about to tell you what a lot of things
Shout
she's
out to
told
them.
me.
Yeah.
But it's normal to fear. Like the
Right.
Bible tells us not to fear, to be fearful, because we're going to be fearful.
Right.
And so the first thing is like, acknowledge that don't be like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. Like, no, you're scared. That makes sense. Even if it doesn't make sense, it makes sense to you. Like that is what your perception of reality is. I don't want to say reality, because I feel like there's only one truth. And like we can get into like a sticky place if it's like everyone has a different truth. No, there's only one. But we do view things and it's like, this is it's your reality,
Right.
So I think acknowledge the fact that you're fearful. And then depending on why it's there, you can trace it back to, okay, because, this happened to you and it's triggering this, or you have a fear that this could happen. And then you walk through it. Okay, well, if that happens, then what? Like with anxiety, like, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid I'm going to fail my test. If you fail your test, then what? Like, what's the worst that could happen, And then also like if I'm gonna fail my test and I'm gonna, not pass grad school and then I'm not gonna make any money and then I'm not gonna, and then it's like, okay, you're catastrophizing. Like why is it that you think of worst case scenario? Like it's like a cognitive distortion, like it's sometimes you catastrophize and think of worst case scenarios, or you think of, it's like all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking, things like that. It's like, okay, identifying it, and it's like, that's there. And like, okay, like, what are you feeling? Whenever you start to get anxious, like, what do you feel physically? What do you start to think? Can you write it down and combat it with scripture? Can you write it down and logically, like, think of like how logical all these things are? Can you catch yourself in the thought? So it's like, these things are real. I mean, the Bible tells us not to do these things, but also there's grace, because if we would have never fallen into sin or the consequences of sin, Jesus wouldn't have had to die for us. So it's not an abnormal thing to be fearful or to be anxious or to be opposite of what the word tells you to be, because we live in a fallen world. And I think we have to, that's what my therapist tells me all the time. Alicia, you're thinking on a very like spiritual level. She's like, don't be so heavenly minded that you're not no earthly good, because she was like, you're still a human and you're still in this world. You're like a follower of Jesus living in a fallen world. Some of these things are going to have impacts, and sometimes it's like you're going to have to pray and do an action, write in your journal. You know what I mean? Like talk to a friend, go to therapy. So
Yeah, because there's this little thing called process of sanctification that I don't think very many people like to talk about, and the fact that there are these natural ways of our flesh that we're fighting, like daily, and that I think a lot of times we just kind of go through the motions in regards to, and I think one of the biggest ways for that is like, and it kind of ties to this other thought, is I think a lot of times as believers we conflate the ideas of Jesus telling us there's going to be trials and God commanding us to build up endurance as pursuing like unhealthy ways of living.
Yeah.
And thinking of just like, oh, I have to suffer through X, Y, or Z. And from there, using that as sort of like a spiritual excuse to like not pursue wellness and health.
Yeah.
And like I've talked with like Tadashi, our buddy, about that a little bit. And because that's a big thing that has been a focus of his in his relationship with the Father over the last few years, is just like pursuing wellness, chasing wellness, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if that becomes the central goal of our faith, like, not really, but if that becomes a byproduct of like getting closer to Jesus and loving people and building his kingdom, then that's good. But yeah, I think just going back to the general point, I think it is as well, like super interesting as you think that like, there's so many things in God's word that he noted in either a symbolic or literal way that now through different measures of science or any other ways of knowledge, we're finding out like, like this was true. This is sick. And so it's so cool. So then from there, what do you think would be your encouragement to someone who is kind of, especially with everything that like 2020 brought and came along with, like, what would you share with someone who now could potentially be in that place of like struggling with different sorts of thought patterns, different positions of like relationship with God, and thinking that he can't go to him for X, Y, or Z, and potentially using some of the resources that God's made available to pursue wellness and peace?
Yeah, I would say it's normal. Like that's my first thing that I would say. It's not abnormal. You are not by yourself. If you can, like lay it all out in front of the Father, because you already feel that way. You already feel that way. So if you feel like he cannot save you and he can't help you, confess that to him. But also, if you can, seek counseling. There are some programs that offer free counseling. There are also church groups like in the DFW area, if you know Watermark or the Village Church, they have some recovery groups, or Region, which I love. It's a Watermark program where it's like you can come for anything. You can come for if you're struggling with gossiping, all the way to if you're struggling with an addiction, all the way to like everything, and they walk you through it. Get into a community group, which is hard sometimes in during a pandemic. But they have some churches have them online where you can Zoom in. Like I just finished a 6 weeks program, and it was through Zoom, but it was still super intentional, and it was community, and it was the body, and things were coming up and out that I don't think people thought they could share, and people were uplifting them in prayer. And so it's like, you're not alone. There are resources online. You can look for like a hotline, a help hotline. You can look for a chat to chat with therapists. Like there's so many ways that you could talk to somebody. But the biggest encouragement is don't sit by yourself, because isolation is a great way for the enemy to continue to attack. And it gets really dark, and it's like 2020 was very traumatic for many different ways on top of just regular life stuff. So you're not by yourself, and it's not weird or crazy for you to be feeling crazy, or just depressed or anxious or hopeless. But I think utilizing those resources of counseling or getting online and seeing if there's someone you can chat with, or calling a hotline, or showing up at a church, a community group, calling a friend, tell your parents, like whatever support system you have, if you have one, like reach out to them.
Yeah, that was good. So, do you have anything else for mental health?
No, I don't. I don't.
Yeah.
We don't want to keep her here for too long.
Yeah. So then I think we'll land the plane with this, because I'd love to.
We're landing planes.
You want me to leave?
No, you don't have to leave.
No.
I'm just kidding.
No.
Of course not.
We're good hosts. Somewhat. We're improving. We can say that. So circling back around to the culture idea, I want to give you one last chance to share anything else about that, and then get to the question of which we let you know beforehand.
Yes.
That basically, what do you think American culture could learn from either German or Nigerian culture, and then vice versa? What German or Ethiopian or Nigerian, goodness.
Who?
I caught myself. Nigerian culture could learn from American culture.
Yeah. I love my cultures. I genuinely love who I am and who God has made me to be. I love my parents. I love my family. And I love how it's just a different dynamic. It was difficult sometimes, but actually very cool to grow up in a household that was so different. Like my parents, there are definitely some traits that similarities they have in the way that they love, and the way that they care, but like just the way that they are so uniquely different. And I'm grateful for the Lord that he has made me that way, because it helps me to relate to a lot of people. It helps me to understand people from a different perspective and see things from a different angle. As far as these questions are always difficult, even in school, because they'll ask like, okay, well, what, like from the culture, and I'm like, I have to write about 2 different cultures, but from the American culture, I think the Nigerian culture can learn how to be a little bit more accepting of differences. Maybe not accepting of differences, or more gracious when it comes to people who could be different or don't believe the way that they believe. American and German culture. Oh my gosh. I can think specifically just Texan culture. Germans could smile. I don't know. I don't know if when you went to Germany, if you were like, everybody is so rude.
There was a girl in my French class.
We're not rude, but that's just how they like. Sometimes it's rude. Sometimes, but yeah, like just to be more like personable sometimes and like say, excuse me. I don't know. But I think that is a big thing. Because my mom always talks about it. She was like, when we moved here and people were like, how are you? It was like, why these random people asking me how they are or how I am. And then I would explain my whole life story and they'd be like, so
That's for all that.
yeah. So maybe that, like, you know, and what can the American culture learn from, I think from Nigerian culture, to be more communal, like to really like be more giving and loving and inviting of others. Because Nigerians really are, specifically, I mean, I can't speak for everyone's family, but it's like my family extends past just like mom, dad, brother. It's like everybody. And these are your friends too? Cool. They're related, you know? So like really lending a hand. And I see such like giving, like if somebody needs something, even if it's the other person's last, they give it. And I've never seen anybody come up without need because it's like just a continuous like, I'll help you, I'll help you, I'll help you. From the German side, I would say maybe like independence and then the determination, because I feel like Germans can be very hard workers. So can Nigerians. But when I think of my mom, like she's just a super like intelligent woman that it's like, oh, this didn't work, let's do this. Like there's always some sort of plan in place. And I just love that. I think you were kind of talking about like that order and that structure. I feel like that would be a cool thing to learn as well.
Yeah, those are good things. Is there anything else you want to ingratiate into this conversation?
That's a good word. I don't know if I can pronounce it yet. I'm not even going to try. So, yeah, we've been trying to get her on for the past maybe 2 years. So we were finally able to make that happen. So, thank you for blessing us with this time.
Yes.
It all worked out in the right time. And
it did.
Yeah, and your drive was a little bit shorter compared to what it could have been. Yeah, compared to what it could have been.
No.
No?
South Lake is closer.
Oh. At the office, whenever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's my fault. I mean, I waited 2 years.
No, it is.
Fault. No, it's.
We should have drove to you. It's our fault.
That's true.
No, it's your fault.
Why wasn't that?
No, we could have met. We could have met in the middle.
We should have met in the middle.
In a parking lot.
Yeah. All the cars driving by. But no, thank you for coming on and really just sharing that. Like I mentioned earlier. What was the word I used?
Ingratiate.
No. About that makes you feel weird. Like there's like
a unique specimen. You call me something.
Specimen. I didn't say
something.
That. At the very beginning.
We've never had one of these before.
Yeah, one of these. There it goes. We've never had one of these before, So we appreciate it. As we can tell, we're trying to balance between both cultures so we can get more of an understanding. So, yeah, thank you for just, taking the time to express all of those things and even just highlighting some of the mental health stuff. We've had a lot of, conversations surrounding that kind of stuff, so I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate that. And maybe we'll bring on more people, that are experts like yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Already have someone in mind. So, just thank you for making the drive and blessing us with, all that you had to share. Hopefully it wasn't too bad. You didn't have to think too fast. I know you're worried about that in the beginning, so.
My gears were grinding on that last one. I was like, I don't know anything.
We can tell. Yeah, we can tell. I was like, she tried to figure
I'm glad
it out.
it's not on camera because they would have been like, what's wrong with her?
Yeah.
My brain.
As long as you don't say United States, the Democratic Republic of the United States.
Exactly.
Nothing's going to beat that. So you're good. You're good.
Hey, man, that was your...
that was terrible.
That was your point of humility.
It was.
It was like
was
both, both.
It was, but it
and
was...
technically it's
terrible.
true.
Yeah.
Technically it is.
So.
It just... Yeah, because one of my friends once said the Dominican Republic of Congo, something like that. I said, what? Dominican Republic? Anyways, but yeah, that's it for my little speech.
Yeah, I thought it was really good because I think something that us in America can continue to learn is like how to, with being a multi-ethnic society, how to adopt and integrate in and ingratiate in the positive aspects of all the unique cultures that we have here.
Yeah.
And so we're learning that both on the individual level and the
Kids
societal
stop
level.
being so mean.
Listen,
Man,
what
kids
are
are
you guys
mean, like-
teaching your children?
don't know.
Please teach. Oh my gosh. I think it's gotten better. No, I don't know.
I
Something
don't think
about
so. Like
elementary
kids are mean,
school.
like at that age.
And you would think it's like
No
junior
filter.
high or high school, but
Yeah.
elementary school, they just come so oh my gosh.
It's pretty bad.
I don't get it.
It's really
I
bad.
don't.
Especially when you bring food to school.
I think it's just like anything different at that age is weird. Like, that's not normal. You know, they're
Yeah.
still learning. They're still processing and developing.
Because you're
so.
trying to learn social norms and stuff like that. And so, yeah, whatever. We won't go off on that tangent.
Yes.
Any last things you want to share?
Good night.
Yeah. Done. Hey,
She said good night.
we can end it on that. So that'll be a wrap for us today, y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. We'll link all of Alicia.
Ooh.
Oh, Lord.
Dang it.
Say the last name.
Alicia.
Ooh.
Dang it.
The
This
J
is
sounds like a
killing me.
Y.
L-E-G. That's a J. My goodness. I am
Alicia.
Alicia.
There we go. Yes.
Okay, that's what I was trying to say. I was like, I don't want to say
okay.
Alicia.
I think you probably saw.
But no, I want to say
Alicia. My
Alicia.
coworkers
Alicia.
are always like, "Why do you tell people the wrong name?" I'm like, "It's just I don't know. It's in here."
I want to honor her, Alicia. It's probably still incorrect.
Yeah, it was
It's okay.
wrong.
We're working on it. We're
Alright,
working on
we-
it.
Now I know
we'll-
you're
we'll
talking
work
about
on
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll link all of her information in the description, so you go support her in anything she's doing, and yeah. But all of our information will be in the description below. Also, if you want to support the podcast, support the outreaches, all the fun stuff that's coming up. So until next time, much love. God bless.